prime time for NFL viewing, but not a very good game. So turn that off and listen to us for the next couple of hours. Philadelphia blowing out San Francisco 31-7 on championship weekend. Hope the next game is much better. Get some friends going to that game. Obviously, the Chiefs playing today, the Bengals in Arrowhead.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I'm
sorry.
Okay. Okay, we good now?
I always forget you're on mic 4. I apologize.
So I'm moving over here so that I can jump on the Sutter Heyman text line and stuff more often. It's kind of why I moved over here. So, yeah, I'm thrilled. I'm in here like loving this. You're like, your Cowboys are like in the same division as the Eagles. I thought you would hate the Eagles more. And I'm like, no, I despise the 49ers, man. I mean, they broke my heart when I was, 11, 12 years old with Dwight Clark and the catch.
And that makes sense to me. I usually hate everybody in my division. Am I on the air now? Okay, there I am. I usually hate every team in my division, but I don't hate the Lions. Why would you hate the Lions?
Yeah, because they're awful.
And it's an automatic win. You want the Lions in your division. You want it.
Exactly.
There's no reason to hate the Lions. I hate the Packers. But beyond that, I really don't hate anybody in that division.
Yeah, no, I despise the 49ers, always have, always will. And the Steelers were the team that I hated more than anybody until the catch, and even after the catch to some extent. And see, you said that you loved the 49ers when Rathbun and Roger Craig were there, and I said I hated them even more when they were there because it pissed me off like they stole them from the Cowboys. Right. Rathbun and Craig should have played for the Cowboys. So they didn't, but I hated the Steelers because the Steelers beat the Cowboys in 3 Super Bowls.
I always liked the fact that they played that same backfield with the greatest quarterback, I think, in the history of football, and Joe Montana. And they both had the Husker stickers on. I think it must have been a great recruiting tool for Tom Osborne at that time.
Yeah.
Hadn't won any national titles yet, but by the time their playing careers were over, he won a few. Because they both played a long time in the league.
Yeah, speaking of recruiting tools, I think one of the best recruiting tools that Matt Rule has right now is just anytime someone puts a microphone in front of him.
By the way, if you haven't seen Bussin' with the Boys with Will Compton and Taylor Luan, it's really good.
And Taylor, that podcast to me it's good. There's episodes that are fantastic. Being a broadcaster, I'd like to cuss as much as I do in real life.
Yeah.
But there's
sometimes it seems forced, doesn't it?
There's a lot of times, and Will Compton's really bad at it. That's the one little critique I would have of Will Compton is, dude, you don't need to drop an F-bomb every third time you talk.
Right.
I mean, if you're passionate and you're fired up and you can tell that it's real, but when you start the sentence off with it, it's like, just.
I couldn't imagine having somebody like
a grown up.
Matt Rule, it didn't bother him at all. You could tell that the cussing he didn't participate in it, but it didn't bother him at all. But you would have somebody like Tom Osborne on that show, and then you're dropping F-bombs. That would seem very uncomfortable to me.
I could see T.O. going, Will. Grown men don't need to cuss.
That's right. I once had a broadcasting professor, because I dropped an F-bomb accidentally on the air because my mic wasn't on, but the engineer's microphone was on, or actually the news guy had left his microphone on, and the equipment wasn't working. I tried to get something to work, and it wouldn't work, and I went to the stop set for a commercial break and couldn't get the thing to fire, and so I fired off an F-bomb. And Professor Walkland came all the way from Avery Hall. It must have been 6 blocks away. And he was very calm, stood in front of the studio door, and he said, if you didn't use that kind of language in your daily activities, you wouldn't use it on the air. That's probably a good point, but God, I was mad.
Yep.
I was really, really mad.
One of the best ones that I like sharing. It's a late coworker of mine that sadly passed away quite a few years ago, but Paul Young was doing overnights.
Good friend of both of ours.
Both of ours, yeah. And Paul was a guy that struggled with some medical conditions. And so doing overnights, which he was at the time, was not exactly high on his list of jobs he wanted. Because battling what it was not easy to do overnight. So he's in like his 5th or 6th week. And Tim Sheridan, who's doing mornings, Tim and the Animal, is looking for a CD. And Paul finds the CD because Tim couldn't find it anywhere. And so Tim goes, "Hey, you win a prize from the prize vault." And Paul goes, "Oh, wow, I'm propping up a tent after that one."
Right,
double F-bomb tent.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that.
And And I actually was in the studio that morning, and I didn't necessarily hear what he said. I just saw Paul fall back against the wall and sink.
He probably thought he was fired.
He did. He came out of the studio, and I was like, "What's up?" And he goes, "My career's over." And I go, "What?" And he goes, "Did you hear what just happened?" And meanwhile, Tim is...
Well, Blaze listeners probably loved it.
Yeah, and Tim is still bright red and trying to catch his breath from laughing so hard.
Right, yeah. We've all had those moments in radio, but we've all survived it. Paul, like all of us in radio, one time or another, I don't think you ever got fired, but I did.
Oh, I did. I got fired. I got fired from the Pinnacle Sports Network.
Oh, that's
what are
right.
you talking about?
That's right. You got fired from a gem gig, but shortly after he got fired from that gig, he was an announcer at Shakers. He was.
Yes, I know.
That's right. Which I always thought was funny. Which is now closed. Let's get to the starting gates. I think COVID closed Shakers. If you don't know what Shakers is, it's a dance establishment.
Yeah, and my dad is actually credited with bringing it to Waverly.
Really?
Even
because
though
he was the former mayor.
Yeah, because he had nothing
Your
to do with it.
dad brought it to Waverly. That's awesome.
He annexed the land anyway. You know, it's really fun that you can tune in to Husker Rewind with Tom and I
and get a Shakers story.
And you have no idea how far off the beaten path we're going to go.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
No, dude. It's 70 years of radio between you and I. We have stories, and some of them are kind of funny. Taking a look at the starting gate, recapping what happened here. We try to cover as much as we can. Each and every show. We only got 2 hours a week, so we both talk a lot, and we try to make sure we get as much in as we can. As Tom mentioned, I think it's 31-7 now. Halftime, is it? Or
it's
close
so
to
disappointing. Brock Purdy got injured very early in this game. They bring in Josh Johnson, which is like their 5th string quarterback.
Yeah.
Lance has been injured. Garoppolo's been injured. Well, Purdy was the 3rd string quarterback, so they were down to their 5th string quarterback.
And Juszczyk, who is their fullback, is their emergency QB.
It's so sad the way this game, because the officiating has been horrible. I know you're
not sad at
you
all.
hate
It's
the
awesome.
49ers, but the officiating has been horrible. I was rooting not for either team, but for a good game, and it's been a bad game.
Yeah, we'll talk about officiating here in a bit. Nebraska women's hoops put up a fight against number 10 Iowa on Saturday, ultimately fell 80-76. However, they have now lost 6 of their last 8 to fall to 12-9. They're 4-6 in the conference. They started the year 10-3. I have a question, because we're going to talk a little bit in depth today about Fred Hoiberg and job security and et cetera, based on everything that's going on with the men's team. This is year 7 for Amy Williams. Women's hoops fans, are you satisfied? You have 2 NCAA tournament appearances. You have a team that always seems to have a lot of promise. You have your best players in the program that leave sometimes because of a disagreement with the coach.
The Leah Brown leaving the program really still makes me a little upset.
Yeah.
Because you have to play her twice every year.
Well, true. But like at the end of the day, if you're a Nebraska women's basketball fan, like, are you satisfied with the job Amy Williams is doing in year 7? I mean, if you are, then I guess your expectations are nowhere near what they were when Connie Yorey was here.
As you mentioned, 2 NCAA tournaments. They went last year, got blown out by Gonzaga.
I mean,
in the first round of the NCAA tournament. I thought this was going to be a big year for Nebraska. Right now, they're on the bubble. I mean, if they get to the tournament, if they make the tournament, then you can say, I'm satisfied.
Yeah.
But right now, that's a long shot. They're going to have to, if not win the Big Ten tournament, they're going to have to go far in the Big Ten tournament to get in the NCAA.
No, I agree. Like I don't follow Nebraska women's basketball a ton. I mean, they're Husker sports team, man. I want them to win every game. But as not an avid fan, I'm talking to avid fans. Are you satisfied with where the program is?
I'm
in
not.
Year 7?
But I'm a tough critic, as most people know. I will say they fought hard. They were down 17 in the fourth quarter. They come back and make it a 4-point loss. And by the way, when they host Iowa the next time around, they're hoping for a sellout. I think they might get it.
It's not often that you get to see a player with the talent of Caitlin Clark.
Yeah,
play live.
She had 33 and didn't play well. She was 9 of 26, did not play well.
She had 33, 14, and 9 or something, and had kind of an off night.
She's, in my opinion, the best player in college hoops. I mean, she's really
hands down. It's not even close.
And Nebraska's best player, at least I think so, Jazz Shelley, has not played well as of late, even though she did have 11 assists yesterday.
Yeah.
It's a tough conversation. We'll get to the Amy Williams conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a lot further down the road than it is.
It probably
with Fred
needs
Hoiberg,
a couple more weeks.
Yeah.
She's not going to get. She's in no danger.
No.
Of getting
I agree.
fired.
I'm just wondering from a satisfaction standpoint, because you came from Connie Yori, who had you undefeated and in the Sweet 16, and if it wasn't for Jessica Shepard not liking getting yelled at, then she'd probably still be here.
Right.
So whatever. Quite a week for recruiting as far as Nebraska athletics in general go. Matt Rule, him and his staff pick up commitments from Ismail Smith-Flores, a tight end from Bob Wager's high school in Texas, as well as the wide receiver from there, which is actually going to be, I believe, a 2024 commitment.
Jamal Charles.
Jeremiah Charles.
Sorry.
Demetrius Bell. And then yesterday, Sua Lifotu, who is a defensive lineman out of not Bakersfield, somewhere out in California. And right now, there's like 38 newcomers that are going to be into the program. I believe maybe 40, including Xavier Betts and Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, who were on the team either 2 years ago or at the beginning of this last season. They've recommitted coming out of the portal after they entered the portal. But more commits for Nebraska football. And on the baseball side, Nebraska picks up 5 commits this week. 2023 infielder Will Jeske of Lincoln Southeast. Rumor has it, Tom, that Will Jeske might have a route to not only come to Nebraska and play baseball next year, he might have a route to pick up a phone and call a number that would have him appear on our show sometime.
I'm hoping to actually get him on this show. I mean, live in studio next week.
I think that's a great idea.
He and his mom, Kay. Kay is awesome. Good friend of ours. Will, known him for a long time. Fought hard to get to the process where he could even try out for Nebraska. Was a Wichita State commit, decommitted, and then got a 33 on his SATs. And so now he won't count against the scholarships. I mean, he's a really smart kid, obviously, but also a very good baseball player. Yep. So excited to hopefully have him on the show next week. By the way, you were talking about the Lefotu.
Lefoto.
Is it Lefoto?
Lefotu.
Played for St. John's Bosco.
Yep.
And it's considered the number 1 ranked team in California and in the country.
In the country, yeah. They lost to Mater D earlier this year and then avenged it in the playoffs.
So good pickup, even though he wasn't a starter. I mean, that's a team just full of D1 starters. Yep. So a nice pickup over the weekend. Yep. We'll talk to Brian Munson within the next 10 minutes or so about recruiting and him included.
Yeah, and so as well as all the 4 football commits this week, baseball picks up 2023 infielder Will Jeske, a commitment from him. 2024 infielder Devin Nunez of Navasota, Texas. 2025 left-handed pitcher Cal Cooper of Elkhorn South. 2025 pitcher and infielder Drew Grego of Bellevue West. And then yesterday afternoon, I believe, Brody Gendra, 15-year-old. Brody Gendra, a two-way, projected right now as a two-way player in college. He's a freshman. He becomes, I believe, the 3rd member of the 2026 recruiting class. All 3 of them are in the top 150 of high school baseball recruits. Gendra is one of the top 15 or something. I mean, Will Bolt got it going on. He also has 7 more guys than he has room for on his roster right now, and a couple of weeks to make decisions.
Yeah, they're going to have to cut some. They're going to get down to 39. I think they're at 44, 45, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
right
now. Otherwise, to wrap up the starting gate, Frank Reich hired as the head coach of Carolina earlier this week. Matt Rule's old head coaching job. I think it was a mistake. The guy's name is escaping. Willie. Oh gosh,
what position group?
Carolina's head coach.
Oh yeah, I've lost it as well.
Yeah,
Wilkes, was it Steve Wilkes?
Steve Wilkes should have got that job. And then to wrap it up, Husker Hoops lost 2 more games this week: 73-68 to Northwestern at home on Wednesday, 82-63 at Maryland yesterday. Huskers have lost 3 in a row, 5 of 6. All 7 of their last losses have been by 10 points or more. One positive is Sam Hoiberg, coach's son. He goes for 15 yesterday, which I don't know is more points than he's scored in his Husker career so far combined. They are 10-12 on the season. They host. They're at Illinois on Tuesday, host Penn State next Sunday at 3:30. I think we're going to try to roll our show into the post game once that wraps up at about 5:30. We'll do the Hoops post game, And whether Strick or Bach or DP or whoever wants to join us, they can. But I think that might just be the smart move for programming for next week. But this is one where if you want to get into it here for the last couple of minutes before we jump over and talk to Brian Munson,
want to talk a little hoops?
I want to talk a little hoops in it because Jake Bachhoven yesterday, I did the postgame show with him, and he brought up a fantastic question. He says, he goes, I use this and I could apply it to Scott Frost in the end of his tenure of year 4 and the beginning of year 5, et cetera. And same thing, beginning of year 4 and currently with Fred Hoiberg. Do you hope that he succeeds? And we all do.
Yeah.
But does your hope end before you get to the part of your brain where you say, I believe he can win here?
Well, to be continued for me, because I really want to see development. I mean, that's what we thought we were getting with Fred Hoiberg. One of the things is that he develops guys, not just NBA talented guys, but he just gets guys better. That's what I really want to see. We definitely saw that from Derek Walker. Derek Walker, from the time he joined the Huskers until now, has improved, 80, 90%, something. Yeah. Whatever percentage you want to put on it. He's improved dramatically. I want to see more of that. I'd like to see, I know Blaise Keita, for example, has been injured this year, has been dealing with a high ankle sprain. Yep. How much more can you get out of him in 9 or 10 games that you have left in the season? Can he develop into a center that you would feel comfortable replacing a guy like Derek Walker? What are you going to get going forward from guys that we think are good? Can they get better? C.J. Wilcher. I mean, C.J. Wilcher's now been here a couple of years, and it hasn't been always consistent basketball that we were looking for. He was a top 100 recruit coming out of high school. Tamanaga, as good as he is, sometimes disappears in games. You're going to get Gary back next year. You're going to get some pieces that we like, but you're going to have to replace. In fact, I was reading this. In fact, I knew it before I actually read it. With Gary, Walker, Griesel, and Bandamel, those guys were 7-3 and could have been better than that. You lose them, and it's a good argument for those people who say keep Fred Hoiberg because you had the injuries. You were playing good basketball. You were the black shirts. You had really a good cohesiveness defensively, and you lost that. So I would say, for those people, they've got an argument that says, bring Hoiberg back. But to me, it's about the development. Since you're not getting those guys back this year, how much do guys that are going to have to play a lot of minutes, the Lawrences of the world, Jock, I think that he has a chance to be really good. I think that you've got Denham Dawson, who has a chance to be a pretty valuable player going forward. How much do those guys down the stretch? Can you win 3 games? If they can win 3 games, and that gets you to what, 14 wins, 14 and 19,
13. But yeah,
then maybe you have an argument that says bring Hoiberg back.
And I'm from the development standpoint, Trey McGowan's got a lot better in the 2 years he was here. Bryce McGowan's, the difference was very noticeable from the beginning of the season to the end of the season with how he played within the offense and as a teammate versus just showing how good he was all the time. He was always a star on his high school team, and he played like he was the only 5-star on the team, and he had no help. And then, when he didn't have the ball, then Alonzo Verge played like he was the only guy on the team, and he had no help. Yeah. And then once both of those guys, to me, showed tremendous progress and growth and development as the season went on. I go back, Cam Mack was a hell of a lot better player when he left here than when he got here. I look at Delano Banton as a guy that would have needed to stay one more year, would not have been able to be a NBA draft pick had he not played for Coach Hoiberg. And this was before Nate Linzer got here, who I think is the best development. I think the development is there. There's a couple of guys on the roster right now that I don't feel there's been development with. I think they've regressed. But that's not saying every guy is going to get it. And the other thing, as far as developing guys and coaching guys up, I mean, let's face it, Nebraska fans always love saying that. I mean, my mom and everybody and in the little town she lives in, they're like, if all they did was get Nebraska boys and they'd coach them up, we'd win another national.
That's part of being a coach, though.
I get it. But at the end of the day, when you coach someone up, the player that you're coaching up, well, they got to want to be coached up.
That's true. but you also have to pick guys that want to be coached up as a coach.
But that's my point, is that you get the guy in and he says all the right, just like, you hire a guy for a job and he says all the right things and he gets here and it's like, yeah, it's not really the right guy for the job. You bring somebody in, and if they don't want to get,
and I understand that happens occasionally, but it's been happening far too often for Nebraska, that they're picking guys that haven't. Here's what I want to see for Nebraska basketball for the last 9 games, and I want to see it in general for Nebraska basketball going forward. You see Creighton. When Nebraska beat Creighton, they were not playing great basketball. Now, they just knocked off yesterday the 13th ranked team in the entire country, Xavier. They got Kalkbrenner back. They didn't have him for a while after the Nebraska game. They're starting to play better. But every single year, Creighton, or not every single year, but most years, Creighton is better at the end of the year than they were at the start or middle of the year. Nebraska basketball has had far too many years where they start out hot or they start off slow. They get better. They build a little. But by the end of the year, they just seem like they've hit a wall. Mentally, physically, they look fatigued. We saw that with Doc Sadler teams and Tim Miles teams and Barry Collier teams, and now we're seeing it consistently. This is the worst 4-year stretch of Nebraska basketball that I think has ever happened.
I think you're right. Especially winning percentage-wise, especially in conference.
7 wins, 10 wins, and right now 10 wins.
Yep.
It's hard to argue against that for people who say it's time to look around the corner. But the odds are they're not going to. They just paid a big buyout for Scott Frost. They don't want to pay a big buyout for Fred Hoiberg. And he has done some really good things this year. That you say, well, they did get better for a while. Yeah. And then they had bad luck. They had some really bad injuries.
And Bach and I talked about this in the postgame yesterday. Like, I had both. It's funny because he goes the devil and the angel on, each year. And I'm
that's
like,
exactly what it is.
Bach, you know me well enough. There's no angel on either shoulder with me. So
there are some good things that have happened this year.
But that's the whole thing. Like, I get the argument. I get the numbers. I'm an analytics guy, man. Bottom line, win the game. They haven't won. Fire him. Flip side, what did you expect this year from him? He delivered until the injuries happened. And now he's trying to figure out how to get the most out of the team that he has left. And I think it was Sam McEwen who tweeted something earlier today from the Omaha World Herald where he said, I guess I expected more these last 2 games.
Yeah. Well, I think it points to how important Bandamel and Gary were.
Length
but that they provide, Nebraska could not. I could tell early on against Northwestern they weren't going to stop their shooters. They just didn't have the ability, the length to get a hand in the face that really mattered, right? They weren't even quick enough. And I like Jamarcus Lawrence. I think Jamarcus Lawrence could be a good player, but he's not Bandamel or Gary.
Well, Denham Dawson as well. I mean, he's a guy that's trying to fill that role of Juwan Gary. They're roughly the same size.
They would be nice complementary players. Yeah. They were bench players who had to become starters, and that just doesn't happen overnight.
Oh, by the way, just to clarify, 11 years of combined college basketball playing experience for Juwan Gary, or just experience in college basketball for Juwan Gary and Emmanuel Bandamel. And, oh, by the way, Denham Dawson and Jamarcus Lawrence. Dawson technically came in halfway through last year, so 2.5 years, not even 2.5 years, because they're both, I mean, that's what I mean. So the experience difference, you're asking those two to fill into you got to give them a little bit of a break.
Well, we'll pick up this discussion with the Nebraska basketball.
The Sutter Heyman text line, props to Oogie for this question, because it's one that we're going to need to ask as we come down the stretch here, unless Nebraska starts pulling off a couple of upsets. Who do you think would be better than Fred as Nebraska's basketball coach next year? If it happens.
Let's save that because we do have a couple in mind.
We were talking about it earlier today.
And they actually connect to a Nebraska coaching tree.
Yeah.
So I think at least one of them does in my mind. I think Nebraska has some good options if they don't decide to stay with Fred Hoiberg. Right now, I think they will. I think that Fred Hoiberg will be the coach of Nebraska basketball next year. I want to talk a little recruiting. Brian Munson knows a lot about it. He lives in Texas. Nebraska trying to get back into Texas and having a lot of success so far doing it. Their latest commit is from California. We'll talk to Brian about him and other happenings in Husker football recruiting. Mike Melby there, Tom Stevens here. Back with Brian Munson next of Husker Online coming up.
My name is Rebecca. I struggled with depression for years. I also smoked. That was my world. Finally, I realized that smoking wasn't helping me. It was making my life worse. So I took control and I quit. Now I'm able to run again and take walks with my grandkids. My tip is there's another world out there, and it's a beautiful place to be.
Call the Nebraska Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-784-8669. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Hi, this is Pastor Tom. Did you know there's a place kids can seek out help when they're away from home and something goes wrong? They find themselves in a difficult spot or even a dangerous situation. Maybe another child is bullying them or a stranger is following them. Perhaps on a date and things just go bad. In Lincoln, here's where they can find help. It's called Safe Place. Safe Place is a national program for children taking place in thousands of cities across the United States. The People City Mission is sponsoring this program in our community and has set up a number of businesses, fire stations, schools, and nonprofits around the city to become safe locations where kids can seek out help. They just need to look for the big yellow sign that says Safe Place on it. Then go inside and ask for help. We will be quickly connected to them and ensure they make it back home or to whatever resources are needed. If you'd like to find out more about Safe Place and ways in which you can get involved, just go to pcmlincoln.org. Remember, when we all do a little, we change a lot.
Papa, why can't we telegraph while riding a horse?
Son, there ain't no one to blame but Jeffro. He was riding old Betsy the Stallion, tip-tapping away at his telegraph, when blam, ran right into the side of the saloon.
Well, if Jeffro can't do it, neither should you. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
Brett Maher misses 4 extra points against the Cowboys. As a special teams coach, what do you do in a situation?
First of all, you get back to routine. You don't overplay it a bunch where it's just like, think about this. But I'd like to know he always stayed on the hash, on the left hash. So all those misses came from the left hash. You can put the ball in the middle or you can put it on the right hash. Okay. I wonder why he didn't change. If he just felt, hey, this is what I do. So that will be an interesting question for me to ask him.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning.
I grew up hearing that women are bad with money. But like many of you, I spent years paying bills, managing checking accounts, and taking care of my family. So turns out women are pretty good with money after all. And now I'm taking control of my financial future by saving for retirement. It's never too late to start, and there's a great website to help you. Check out WeSaySaveIt.org and jumpstart your retirement savings on your budget and your timeline. That's WeSaySaveIt.org. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
We're in the service. Rewinding back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Husker Rewind. My name is Mike Melby. Tom Stevens sits across from me. As we like to say in live radio, we are efforting Mr. Brian Munson. Before the break,
responding at this point, but we'll keep efforting, Brian.
Before the break, we were talking. We got a text in off the Sutter Heyman text line. Got another one from Byron, and one comment that Byron had was that the guys returning are all role players, and I don't disagree with that. You don't have any. Not all of them. Juwan Gary is returning. He's not a role player. And he said, we need 3 to 4 guys in the portal that can score. Do not know if it's worth bringing Fred back in that case. So that being said, the question then becomes, okay, if you bring Fred back,
right,
you have an established culture that changed this year based on the way practices were run, the buy-in on the defensive end, etc. And you have Eli Rice, who he goes to IMG Academy. IMG Academy is going to put 11 guys that are on their roster this year into Power 5 Division I basketball programs. Eli Rice is the best player on that team. He's coming to Nebraska next year. Is he Bryce McGowan's type of 5-star impactful player? Don't know yet. But the dude can play. The only thing that worries me is the angle of his shot when he gets his 3-point shots off, he's got a pretty low release point, and it worries me.
But he makes them.
He does, but he's got a pretty low release point, which worries me because teams are going to be able to defend that pretty easy. Regardless, unbelievably talented young man and tremendous athleticism. And to Byron's point, we need 3 to 4 guys in the portal. And I'm going to throw this out. We needed 2 to 3 guys from the portal last year. And we wound up getting a guy like Emmanuel Bandamel, who's the best on-ball defender Coach Hoiberg has ever coached. A guy like Juwan Gary, who was nothing but an energizer guy that just absolutely lit things up on offensive glass, defensive glass, energy. Anytime you needed a spark of energy, Juwan Gary was the guy that gave it to you.
Yep.
And I just feel like there is in next and a guy that could have been here had Nebraska physicians signed off on it, Keontae Johnson. If he would have played this year at Nebraska, I think it would have been a far better team than it is, or it could have potentially been without injuries.
That's the one that just sticks in my craw today.
Completely agree.
In fact, if you don't know the Keontae Johnson story, high-profile player out of the SEC, played for Florida his freshman year, collapsed during a game, I believe.
Yeah, walking out onto the floor.
And had a heart condition. And you would understand why Nebraska didn't want to take a chance on him. But he was projected to the preseason player of the year in that league.
Yep.
He visited Nebraska and wanted to play for Nebraska. And Nebraska medics examined him and said, you know what, I don't think this is a good move by us, or maybe for your health in the future, young man. But here's the thing. You knew the kid was going to play somewhere in college basketball. You weren't preventing him from ever playing basketball again just because you said he can't play for us. He was going to play somewhere.
Yep.
And he chose Kansas State. Kansas State is having the best year that they've had in a long, long time. Beat Kansas just recently. Beat Florida, Keontae's old school, yesterday. And they're having a Sweet 16 type of year. So I want to continue this conversation. I believe we've got Brian Munson on the line. Hi, Brian. How are you? Are you there? Top one? There he is. Oh, maybe he isn't. Damn it.
It's top one. Brian can call back. I'm sure he's listening in Texas. And so here's my I agree completely with Byron off the Sutter Heyman text line. We need 3 to 4 guys in the portal that can score. Maybe 2 to 3. I don't know that we need 3 to 4, but we need a couple of guys that can put the ball in the basket.
Yeah, I agree. But Keontae would have been a good start. And if you get that guy, how many other guys follow because you've got that guy?
Yep. So we'll put a bow on this for right now. And return. Do we have Brian?
All right. Are you there, Brian?
I'm here.
Hey, Brian. Welcome in. How are you?
Hey, man. I'm doing fine. What'd y'all think about that first game?
I'm glad we didn't miss much.
As a Cowboys fan who had his heart broken by Dwight Clark and the 49ers, I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Brian Munson of Husker Online, presented by On3, joins us. Nebraska gets a brand new commit. Help me with the pronunciation. Sua Lafotu? Lefotu. They're getting a big guy.
Polynesian, you got to kind of abbreviate every vowel.
Okay, there you go. Played on the number 1 team in California at St. John's Bosco, I believe. But a project maybe for Nebraska. How do you see this going for Nebraska with this addition?
Well, so I think everybody is pretty caught up on the idea that he didn't even start his senior year. Look, I find it a tremendous luxury if you are a high school football coach and you've got a 6'4", 290-pound guy that you get to rotate in. I mean, there's some college teams that don't even have that luxury. And, I think when I watched him play, he's got great technique. He's got some speed. He's got some athleticism. It's a little bit more limited. He does have to develop. He's going to have to get some things and bring the better part of himself out at Nebraska. He's a bit of a block of clay, but there's some potential there. I think it was enough potential for Nebraska, obviously, to kind of see it as, small risk, big reward with a kind of guy like that. I think the other side of this too, and it's something I mentioned in my story, there's a desire by Matt Rule and his staff to really get kind of more of a Polynesian culture kind of going at Nebraska. You put Brody Tagaloa, as his official visitor host. Those two guys hit it up, and then when I talked to Sua yesterday, he's the first guy that says Polynesian people hang out with other Polynesian people. That was what he basically said. So in essence, from a college recruit perspective, Polynesian players are going to go where other Polynesian players are. So there's definitely a need to kind of put some things together for Nebraska. And I think they got a couple nice cornerstones to kind of do it. When you get a guy from Bosco, obviously number one team in the nation last year, nice little place to go ahead and start building some ties back to. And obviously you get another guy that's Polynesian. You get Noah Gates to kind of go along with Tagaloa. And I think you could actually start putting some things together if you are starting to do that. And obviously Nebraska is reaching out in California, and Rigola was recruiting in Hawaii. They've been trying to get guys out of Utah. So I think that this has got a lot of things working for it when it comes to Nebraska's favor.
So, Brian, I want to ask you a question on recruiting philosophies, because to me, Matt Rule's makes no sense, and I absolutely love it. I'm going to be a head coach. I'm going to recruit the 500-mile radius, and I'm going to focus there, and that's going to be my team. I'm Bill Snyder at K-State. I'm going JUCO every year. We're going to recruit here and there. I'm only going to take this type of player. Yeah, that's Matt Rule. I'm only taking this type of player. Yet a handful of the latest offers are the number 5 ranked guy in the 2024 class, the number 7 ranked guy, the number 19 ranked guy, 5-star players. And oh, by the way, also a couple of guys that are track stars, that are 0 stars, that have no football offers. He doesn't care if you have the tangibles that he can mold into a football player that can be successful and have the potential in his mind to go to the NFL. He wants you playing for him. He doesn't care about star. I've never seen a recruiting philosophy like this. Have you?
No. Well, I mean, maybe Tom Osborne. I mean, Tom Osborne had a great mix of guys that came in. He had the 4 and 5-star guys, and then he had guys that were, the legendary 2 and 3-star heart, or 3 hard guys, like the guys that were some effort dudes. And there's always a need to have that balance into your locker rooms, into your weight room, onto your practice field. You gotta kind of try to bring out the best in both sides, right? I mean, the 5-star guys have got ultimately probably is, a little bit more of a tight window. Like they can go develop, but you're really hoping that those 5-star guys get the more out of the star guys. But at the same time, you're hoping the 3-star guys push the 5-star guys. It's kind of the same thing with the whole walk-on program and the scholarship guys as well. But I think to your point, there's an underlying fabric to some of these things. And obviously I think you hit on it too. He likes track guys. He likes guys that have track times, that are out there, that have good speed. Look at the new offer today. I mean, you had DeAndre Barnes that was in for an official visit, very, very quiet, doesn't have an offer going out to Lincoln, gets an offer while he's in Lincoln. But that's a 10-7 100 and a 200 meter, champion for the state of Colorado. I think he was like a 21.49 as a 200 meter guy. So he loves the speed. And I think what he does is he is heavily dependent and has trust in the way that they can go out there and develop guys. Yeah. And I think that ultimately is going to be really one of those things. I think Nebraska fans are going to want to take a look at that and watch very closely about when some of these guys are coming in. They don't have those stars, but they have kind of this underlying fabric, and it's dependent on, basically getting those guys to come to Lincoln and become the best possible players and develop and have that system of development.
We're talking with Brian Munson, Husker Online, presented by On3. One of those guys that was a 0-star and I think looks like a 5-star athlete. I think you've had a chance to see him play basketball a couple of times, Jeremiah Charles. That guy, you look at him and you think, how is he not a 4-star? But he hasn't played any football, and that's the reason.
I tell you what, I went out and watched him play Friday night, and I'm headed to Nebraska on Friday, and I'll be up there for a couple of weekends to kind of go through the Lincoln High Schools and Omaha High Schools with the rest of the Husker Online crew. And I really regret not having more of an opportunity to go out there and watch both Jeremiah and Ismail, Smith Flores, because number one, they have a fantastic basketball team, but number two, Jeremiah is so explosive. Oh my goodness. So Friday night, very first play, he gets a breakaway, he gets a dunk. He had 5 total dunks on the night. It should have actually been 7, with the last one being an alley-oop. I got video of one of his 5 dunks. It's incredible how explosive it is, and how explosive he is. And he's a 6'2"-ish, 175, 180 guy that just has this frame that's like, put him in a weight room, put him in a nutrition program, and you're going to see weight get added to his frame. And I think it was so interesting, too, when Nebraska hosted him a week ago, they were telling him they want to take shots down the field with him as a wide receiver. This is the class, 2023 class, between the transfers and the recruiting class. Nebraska brought in 5 guys that were sub 10.5. Think about that for a second, and then how that kind of pertains to the words that they use to recruit Jeremiah Charles. Yeah. They really have a lot of optimism, around him. And I think as far as like 50-50 balls are concerned, with where he is at with his athleticism and timing the jump and all that good stuff, they're more like 80-20. I mean, he has got some absolute hops, and if you got him against a field side corner, he's got that advantage all day long.
Hey, Brian, his hops reminded me, the first couple of times I saw some video of him playing basketball, he reminded me of Trey McGowan's. Trey McGowan's had, like, for a smaller guy, you're just like, is there a little mini trampoline he's hitting in the floor? Because no one should be able to jump that high.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that myself, but here's the deal. While I went there to scout Jeremiah and Ismail, Jeremiah has a twin brother. His name's Josiah. And Josiah played 4 years of football at Arlington Martin, and he's going to New Mexico State to play defensive back. And he literally jumped one time, and I swear to you, he was wearing the rim for his hat. He literally had the rim right off the top of his head. So his head, and when Jeremiah was jumping, his arm was getting way above the rectangle, in between the rectangle and the top of the backboard.
Wow.
That's crazy.
I mean, I kidded with those guys. I was like, you're going to have to talk to Coach Rule about allowing the football team to have an intramural team. And both those guys actually got to go talk to Coach Hoiberg about walking on.
Hey, Brian, you're a bit of a kind of a historian when it comes to Nebraska football and recruiting is concerned. And obviously a very important recruit for the 2024 class is Dylan Raiola. And they might have an in that his dad played here and his uncle coaches here. But I asked Mike before the show this question, and I want to get your response. Dylan Raiola is the most important recruit for Nebraska football since. Finish that sentence.
Wow. And I want the name I want to say is kind of unfair, because I would say he was an in-state guy, and I keep kind of coming back to Amon Green.
Yeah.
But the
I
problem there,
Amon.
obviously, is that he's an in-state guy. But Amon Green, I mean, talking to him, when I talked to him about his nephew, Niles Paul, I mean, Amon was really looking to leave the state. I mean, there were some things that really had to happen for him to kind of stay home. So, I mean, it's similar, because you've got such a key cog that you can kind of see, your offense setting up around for, 2+, 3+ years potentially, with a player like that. And that's obviously what you got with Amon. Even though he had LP, goes pro, and then Amon has this amazing junior year. So I kind of lean towards Amon. I mean, I'm kind of on the spot there a little bit, but Amon was incredibly important for Nebraska.
Brian Munson from Husker Online joining us. Brian, before I let you go, I want to ask you a question that I asked last week, I believe, of Steven Sipple. And you mentioned that we've got like 5'10" guys coming in to play wide receiver. And I could tell you right now, I have had 2 cars in my lifetime that could not run a 10.5 100. But they brought in right now, I believe, 10 additions to the wide receiver room that already has some guys in there that are playmakers. The two that come to mind, obviously, Alante Brown, Marcus Washington. But there's like 17 guys in that room right now. How do they make the majority, because all is not going to happen, how do they make the majority of them happy?
Well, that's going to be difficult. And I think that's going to be one of the rooms that's going to have the highest amount of turnover. I mean, this is not a big branch to go out on, or a limb to go out on, and tell you this, but that room is going to have the most turnover, from it after the spring is concerned. And I think what's going to really have to come down to is, obviously, it's going to come down to your evaluation and how those guys are responding in practices. Look, those guys are going to have some fair and equal opportunity, I think, to catch the coach's eye early on in spring. But every opportunity you get, if you don't take advantage of it, you're going to see it diminish. You're going to see it decrease, and there's going to be less of a chance, basically, to get the eye back of that staff, because there's probably a little bit of preconceived notion, but they don't want to kind of depend on that. And they want to have a good look at those guys because they've had the evals from the previous staff to kind of fuel things. So they want to go back and get a fresh look at those guys. But I think it's going to be, look, when you get an opportunity, you need to make the most of it. That's for certain. And then when you bring back a guy like Betts and Castaneda too, who are part of that, the number that you put out there, that's kind of that low risk, high reward kind of situation. You're hoping something great can happen there. But obviously, I mean, if it doesn't, then it's on, you've got a couple of things then that can happen. So I think that a lot of those things are high risk, high reward. And then I think it's like, make the most of your opportunity every single time you get a chance to take a rep, make a block, make a catch, whatever. You got to make the most of it.
Brian Munson, our guest, we got to get out of here, but signing day is Wednesday. You expect Barnes to sign any more after that?
So Sewell will sign, and then you'll get the two guys from Arlington Lamar, and then we're going to find out what's going on with Barnes. I think it's pretty big that he picked up the offer. And then you're waiting on maybe the walk-on Bo Sparks, who's a former Lincoln Southwest guy, who will make a signing day announcement, and that's a 4-3 wide receiver as well as a walk-on. Yeah. So there's a couple things to kind of watch on signing day, but ultimately I think it's pretty much been determined.
There should be at the spring game, just have a big race. That'd be fun to watch. Like,
well, yeah, Malachi Coleman at the Polynesian Bowl was down there, second fastest guy in that whole thing. Let's see how he stacks up against his teammates. He may be third or fourth fastest.
That's got to be a part of the spring game, maybe a regular game. Well, obviously it would be a part of the regular season. Good stuff, Brian.
I agree, guys. All right. We'll talk to you guys soon.
We'll talk to you soon. Brian Munson of Husker Online, presented by On3. We could talk to him for another hour.
That's the fun part about some of these guys that we have on is their knowledge, their background, their understanding of the program and where it's going and the inside stuff that they're willing to share because the kids that are telling them stuff trust them. And they know what they can say and can't say. And they give you such little bits that maybe you don't know and some background on guys. Yeah. Just absolutely fabulous interview with Brian.
I want to talk about scholarship distribution because Nebraska is in the hundreds right now, and they've got to get down to 85 by fall camp. How are they going to do it? Brian gave us a little of the info, but I want to continue that conversation with Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens. It's Husker Rewind every Sunday, 5 to 7.
Vershawn Jackson, the captain here for The Body Shop. And man, did they hook me up with a great massage recently? The captain has a lot of stress in his life, as many people do. And for 1 hour, it was all relief. The team at The Body Shop gave me a deep tissue massage that hit every area that I was in pain at. Whether you're looking for a Swedish massage, sports massage, deep tissue, hot stone, aroma, or more, there's only one place to go. The Body Shop at 48th NA. Book an appointment today at thebodyshoplincoln.com.
Hi, Sean Callahan here of HuskerOnline.com, inviting you to join us here on 93.7 The Ticket every Saturday morning now in our new time. We're on from 8 to 9 with the weekly Husker Online radio show. We'll give you the latest in recruiting. We'll talk about what's going on with both football, basketball, and we'll probably share a few stories from the inside. It's every Saturday morning right here on 93.7 The Ticket. It's the Husker Online radio show from 8 to 9 a.m.
I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me Papa Bear because I'm grilling up dinner. You get it?
Yes, good job.
So what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Husker Rewind. Sunday afternoons, 5 to 7. We do this every Sunday here on 93.7 The Ticket. If you'd like to join the conversation, by all means, Honda of Lincoln hotline is open, 402-464-5685. Sutter Heyman text line is the same number. And we just got finished up from Husker Online with Brian Munson. And Brian was talking about the wide receiver room and some attrition we may see after spring ball. There are currently, I believe, 17 scholarship or soon-to-be scholarship people that will be in that receiver room at the conclusion of spring ball with who's on campus and who will be here in the fall. They are not taking 17 scholarship receivers into the 2023 season. That I can promise you. A couple of things that now play into this. NIL money. Are there guys that they are simply going to go to and say, I need you, or are they going to go to the 1890 Collective and say, we need this young man to no longer be on scholarship, but we definitely want him on the field. So he is now going to become a preferred walk-on, and he is going to need X number of dollars to make sure that he's getting his full ride scholarship. Oh, and a little something else for his name, image, and likeness. Who are those guys going to be? There is not a chance I'm going to try to speculate who may leave, who may stay. All I'm saying is right now you got 17 guys, and that number may be 16 or 18 too, when it all shakes out. But at the end of the day, there's roughly 17 guys in that receiver room that have an opportunity to come in and do what Trey Palmer did last year. Because, almost all of them have that kind of speed. That's the one thing. He said, we brought in 5 guys who run 10 500s or better.
I'd like to see the relay team built just from the wide receiver room. Bryce Turner is one of those guys.
Yeah.
He might be the fastest guy in that room. Unless you're talking about Jalen Lloyd, then he might be the fastest guy
there's this guy
in the room.
Malachi Coleman.
And then Malachi Coleman might be the fastest guy. He was the fastest guy at some of these all-star games. And then, of course, you get a couple of guys back that you thought were gone. Isaiah Garcia Castaneda, we thought he was gone, but Matt Rule is hired, and he thought, well, maybe I'll stick around and see what this is all about. Xavier Betts comes back, probably in part because of Rule.
By the way, do you want to talk about speed? Xavier Betts better be in the conversation as well. That play against Northwestern a couple of years ago, I watched the replay of it again, and you're just like, humans aren't meant to go that fast.
Yeah, it's just going to be interesting. Of course, so many guys from the portal. And actually, that is a position group that has worked out the last couple of years. Trey Palmer worked out pretty well from the portal. And then the year before that, Samari Toure.
Yeah.
And then you've got some other interesting pieces. Tommy Hill switch from defensive back to wide receiver. He's fairly fast.
Crap. I was just going to say Tommy Hill's really fast too.
Alante Brown is in that room. And then the tight end position, they'll figure that out. Got a really good transfer from Georgia to mix in with Thomas Fedoni, who hasn't got a chance to hit the field. But it's going to be for me, maybe the most interesting position group of all the groups coming up in April when they play the spring game.
Think about that tight end room right now. You have the number 1 tight end recruit in the country in the 2020 class and the number 1 tight end recruit in the country
number
in
2.
the 2022.
He was number 2. He was lousy. He was number 2 in that class.
Man.
It's going to be fun to watch it. But let's face it. Either you get the NIL money or you just have some hard conversations.
Well, there's still going to be hard conversations.
Because there's over 100 guys on scholarship.
102 right now by most counts.
And it doesn't sound like Nebraska's done signing guys anytime soon.
No.
So what do? You have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
And that's where, and I kind of wanted to pick up the conversation because now you no longer have a 25-man scholarship limit. It used to be that way from the NCAA. Nebraska's gone way beyond the 25-man scholarship limit. They're in the 30s, I believe, now. And then you've added 11 transfers as well. I think by the time spring ball ends, some of these guys will leave, but then I think more guys will come in. I don't think they're done adding guys.
No, I think it's going to be a relatively small number that would come after out of the portal. After
you could
spring
probably
ball.
still use
I'm
an
gonna say
offensive
3.
lineman.
I would say an offensive lineman, a defensive. I'd always take a defensive lineman.
Yeah. You're always going to take a big dude who can move.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's going to obviously be it. And then other than that, I mean, if let's face it, if there's a guy that runs a 10-300 somewhere that transfers, I don't care if he's a receiver, a DB, or whatever, you'd have to imagine that they may at least give him a call and say, hey.
Does it make you feel a little bit dirty the way it has gone? I think Matt Rule has learned a few things from being in college football and then his time in Carolina, where he was told he had 4 or 5 years to get that thing built. And then after year number 2, they said, see ya. It's not working out. He thought he had a long runway in Carolina. He gets a long runway at Nebraska, but I don't think he's taken it. I think it's a fairly short runway. This is not going to be, I think the quote on Bussin' with the Boys, this is not a slow burn.
No, that was last year. Yep.
That was last year, and that's what he said. And the way he's reacted with the guys he's taken in the portal, I'm getting as many good football players as I can in one room and see who pops up, see who develops first.
Well, and that's the thing, is the true belief that not only Coach Rule, but his entire staff have in their program, with air quotes. They know what they're doing. They know it works. They know they are going to win football games. And they know that there are guys that are going to buy in that they didn't think would. And they know there are guys that they thought would be stars that may not work out. They've been through it.
Yeah.
And like you said a little bit earlier about, preconceived, there's a little bit of knowledge on the staff of, who we are going to truly try to keep and who we may, just sit down and say, hey, I'm not sure this place is for you, et cetera. I think everybody's getting a clean slate and they all get to start with a clean page to start spring practice. Right now they're in winter conditioning. I can promise you every single rep of every single lift they're doing is being critiqued and looked at. And how are they taking direction from Corey Campbell and the strength staff? This is all a part of it. I mean, it all started last Monday and it's not going to slow down and stop. Actually, 2 weeks ago, I guess.
And sometimes it's weeding players out, finding out who really wants to be here and who really doesn't want to be here happens during winter conditioning.
Yeah.
When you get on the mat and do some of these drills and when you do some of these lifts and they're demanding one more lift when you thought the last one was going to be the last one. And it's not going to be easy and you make it really hard for that reason. You should make it hard every year.
Yeah.
To find out, but especially in year number 1, you want to know who. You don't know anything about these guys. You just got here. You just walked in the door. You got to get to know these guys really quickly. So you got to find out who the leaders are and which guys are not going to cut it. And you do that in winter conditioning. Corey Campbell is that guy. But when Marcus Satterfield stood in front of the media and says, we need wide receivers, he wasn't kidding.
No kidding.
He went out and got wide receivers like crazy. So now that you've got 17 of them, you can't carry 17 on your roster. It's just, you can't. Even with NIL, they're not going to carry 17 wide receivers.
No, it doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, you need a fullback. Do you have guys that are bigger receivers that may be able to work into an H-back / fullback type of position?
That guy may or may not be on the roster right now.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Is the guy on the roster or not right now? We'll find out. Still an hour to go here of Husker Rewind. My name is Mike Belby. That's Tom Stevens. We're going to give you an NFL update on the massacre that's going on in Philadelphia.
It's over. That massacre is over.
Yeah, and we will. We're going to chat all kinds of stuff. We're going to talk some Husker hoops. We've got Steve Sipple of the On3 Network coming up a little bit later on as well. Tailgate recipe coming up, both drink and food. Going to be a fun-filled hour. Make sure you stick around for it right here on 93.7 The Ticket.
You were almost home when suddenly you find yourself battling off the germs that cause sore throats. Luckily, you've been training for this moment by staying up to date on vaccinations, washing your hands, disinfecting surfaces at home, and avoiding touching your face. And thanks to the great tips at catchgoodhealth.org, you're on your way to being the very best at staying well. Don't let the Pikachu damage your health this cold and flu season. Instead, start your training today at catchgoodhealth.org.
Action Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Electric is the call I make when I have a need for plumbing services. Whether it's for my home or office, if I need a repair to a water heater, softener, or even my garbage disposal, I know I can count on Action to help. In one simple call, their amazing customer service team promptly schedules a service call, often getting to my needs within a day. Action delivers honest, quality services we can count on. To learn more, visit actionlincoln.com.
Happy Hour with Nick Sainert and Enrique Alvarez Clary.
Why do people hate alternate uniforms? What is the problem with the university or players wanting to have some type of fun? People are like, oh, well, Penn State and Michigan and Alabama, they don't change uniforms. They just go out there and they play football games. That's cool. You can do alternate uniforms and still be a blue blood. It's something that could attract recruits. And yes, I understand.
Yeah, it says that
winning attracts recruits. That's all you need to do is win. Play football. Shut up.
Weekdays from 1 to 2 on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
My simple solution to the problem was remove people from the scene and help them feel safer.
In response to attacks against Asian Americans, Maddie Park raised over $250,000 to donate cab rides to the Asian community.
There is so much more work to be done. We really need to come together and tackle this issue as a community.
Support the Asian community. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
I'm Jenny Benson, president of the Nebraska State Education Association. It's a new year. One resolution that should be a priority is to make reading a part of your child's daily routine. Kick off the new year by making reading a priority in your home. Read to your children. Let them read to you. Make every day an opportunity to sharpen your child's language skills while expanding their vocabulary and knowledge.
Sponsored by the Nebraska State Education Association. Aired in cooperation with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
This is how we do every day. We be grinding, and if you wanna come and text us,
If you love them enough to turn off your music and pretend like their music is your music,
This is Mommy's jam.
then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Let's play it again.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This message is for Karina. Our mom will finish her high school diploma at age 28. Hi, Mom. It's Emmettith and Nicholas. Congratulations on getting your diploma. You worked so hard and have taught us so much. We love you.
When you graduate, they graduate. Finish your high school diploma for you and for them. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
More of the Sunday Rewind is coming your way next.
60% of the time, it works every time.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back. Tom Stevens here. Mike Melby there. It's Husker Rewind every Sunday from 5 until 7. Hour number 2, which includes Stephen M. Sipple on 3. He'll be here within the next 20 minutes or so. We'll talk a little bit of everything, a little recruiting, and definitely get his opinion on this question because he's the one that made me think about it. In his conversation with Dominic Raiola, his dad, Nebraska's definitely back in it for Dylan Raiola. His uncle coaches here. His dad weighs in this decision. Matt Rule certainly has impressed the family. But Dylan Raiola, the most important recruit for Nebraska football since. Finish that sentence for me, either on the text line or Sutter Heyman text line. You can do that, 464-5685. Weigh in any way you want.
Yeah, Brian Munson said Amon Green, and I thought that was...
When I thought of this question, I thought of Amon.
Yeah, and you mentioned him, and I didn't think that he was quite as important. And the reasoning that I used is I'm equating it to the program where it's at and a player that can be that big of a difference maker. So Amon Green was a recruit out of Omaha that everybody expected since he's out of Omaha, he's going to come to Nebraska. And no
it was
offense,
close. It was close to not.
I get it. But at the end of the day, he was coming into the best program college football had ever seen up to that point.
It wasn't really complete. The 60-3 run was not complete. That was 95.
There was 1 year away. Yeah. But he was a freshman in 97.
Yeah.
So, or no, you're right. He was a freshman in 95.
Yeah.
But
he played in that game against Florida, the national title game.
And so I guess, but all the pieces were there. We had a national title.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And so, I mean, if he doesn't become a Nebraska Cornhusker, is it the end of the world? No, not really at all. Do we not win in 97?
Yeah, you certainly didn't need him to like the whole year that LP was out in 95. Amon was there filling in for LP when he got suspended.
I agree.
And had a very nice year, but you're right. That team was so talented. You felt like they could put you or me at running back and we'd be fine.
Oh yeah. I mean, with my speed, man, I ran like it was scorching. It was like a 5.4 40. I mean,
so if you don't say Amon Green, who would you say?
I wouldn't say Amon Green. I would go back and equating it to, it's different because now we're talking about 5 straight losing seasons and no bowl games in 6 out of 7 years and blah, 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 versus a 7-game bowl losing streak. Because in Nebraska fans' minds, there's not a whole lot of difference between where Tom Osborne was in 1991 and where Nebraska football is today. It was
he always won 9 or 10 games.
Dumpster fire then, according to them, because we'd lost 7 straight bowl games, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. He's only beat Switzer a couple of times. Yeah. I think it's Tommy Frazier.
That's a good pick.
And you got to go back to that point because and a little bit of it is the position. But that said, another one that came to mind that I really think you have got to include is a guy by the name of Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah, Ndamukong Suh, and Nebraska had to recruit him twice.
Yeah, you had 2 coaching staffs that had to recruit him.
And then Frost had to recruit him again when he was thinking about going to the NFL. But he stuck around.
Well, not Frost, Pelini.
Well, or I'm sorry, Frost. Pelini had to re-recruit Ndamukong Suh and convince him not to go to the NFL.
Well, that's what I meant.
The first time around, Bill Callahan, of course, got him to. And Bill Callahan doesn't get enough credit for being a great recruiter. He was really a good recruiter and worked really hard at it. But because the record wasn't very good, and I understand that, we rake Bill Callahan over the coals. I would put Sue on that list. The first one that I can remember as a child was getting Turner Gill. Turner Gill completely reshaped Nebraska football. I think that, and Barry Switzer has told me, we've interviewed him. He said, I should have gone and recruited Turner Gill personally because I thought we had him. I sent somebody from the staff. They screwed it up, and he ends up at Nebraska, and, they didn't win a national title. They should have. 2-point conversion fails. Yep. They kick the extra point. They beat Miami, and Turner Gill does get a national title. But I would put Turner Gill way up high on the list.
A random number off the Sutter Heyman text line says Eric Crouch. How can you not count a Heisman Trophy winner?
Yeah, I think I would put him on there. I mean, you mentioned this. You didn't put Eric Crouch as high as some people because you thought Bobby Newcomb, had he not had the knee injury, would have been the starting quarterback.
Yeah, I think if Bobby Newcomb doesn't have the knee injury, and this is just based on a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of hearsay, we all know that Crouch, when he was not named the starter, quit the team and went back home. I mean, that's a fact. We know that. And if Bobby Newcomb doesn't injure his knee, and I don't know that Eric Crouch becomes the starter. And I don't know that Eric Crouch, if he's not the starter, ultimately winds up staying at Nebraska. So I get it. But again, it's at the end of a very powerful run of Nebraska football. So he won a Heisman. I'm not taking anything away from him. I'm just saying that circumstance played into his favor.
Would you put Joe Burrow on this list?
You know what? I would put Joe Burrow on this list. You threw Joe Burrow out because we're not talking just players that we got. We're talking
guys that you didn't get.
Lost.
By the way, Nebraska failed on Joe Burrow twice.
Yeah. Exactly.
Bo Pelini had a chance to recruit Joe Burrow. And here's the thing about Joe Burrow. I've always said this about Joe. Even if you don't think he's as great as everybody else says he is, you take him anyway. He's a legacy recruit. His dad played here.
And he wanted to come here.
And he wanted to come here not once, but twice. And, of course, the famous line from Scott Frost, you think he's better than what we got, Adrian Martinez.
And the funny thing is,
now we watch him play on TV.
And the funny thing is, the response from Husker Nation when he asked that question was like resoundingly yes.
Yeah.
It was. And it's, you're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
So,
well, at that point, Adrian was coming off that great freshman season, and he was mentioned as one of the Heisman candidates. He did have a great freshman year.
he did.
And that's when Scott Frost was quoted as saying, "Do you think he's better than what we got?"
Which tells you a colossal problem in his thinking as a head coach.
Yeah.
You have the ability to bring somebody in that is possibly better than the guy you already have. I don't know, like Matt Rule bringing in Jeff Sims to compete with Casey Thompson. Yeah, that's a bad thing. Let's have two really good guys that can play quarterback. Why would you want that as opposed to having a guy that gets it handed to him on a platter and he doesn't even have to try, which was painfully obvious his sophomore and junior years? I mean, come on.
I think losing a legacy recruit for me is always harder.
Oh, yeah.
When the dad played here, had great success, and the son is considering the school and doesn't choose the school. That's why it was painful in part for me. But Joe Burrow was the Ohio Player of the Year.
Yeah.
Then he went to Ohio State and couldn't beat out anybody. He was not just second team. I think he was third team quarterback, and he decides to transfer to Nebraska. Nebraska didn't want him. He ends up at LSU. It obviously worked out well for him. He wins a national title in college and is now playing to go to the Super Bowl today. But the Chiefs try a weird play.
An illegal forward pass right there.
They try a lateral, which is typical Andy Reid. It didn't work, but it didn't hurt him either. They recovered.
That's an illegal forward pass.
You would think they would have to review that because it did look like an illegal forward pass. They were trying to get it to McKinnon. They threw it to Kelsey, and then he lateraled it forward, it looked like, to McKinnon. It's close. It's close. I don't know
where that lands. That's really close. By the way, Chiefs are up on the Bengals 3-0, about 2 minutes to play, 1:37 left in the first quarter. In this game specifically, I want to get back to the talk about important recruits, as important as Dylan Raiola, but Joe Burrow's already been sacked several times in this game, and that's the big bugaboo against Cincinnati. If they can't figure that out, this is a game that everybody's saying Cincinnati should win, and I agree. But if they can't figure out
3-0 against Mahomes,
if they can't stop this Kansas City pass rush, their offense ain't going anywhere.
Well, their offensive line is not a good one. It is one of the.
Well, last year is like the worst in the NFL.
It's one of the worst in the NFL still, but you have such great wide receiving talent in T. Higgins and Jamar Chase that they make up for it. Plus Burrow has the great arm, but the Chiefs have a pretty good defensive line as well. It's early, but if Mahomes scores here with the bad ankle and they go up 10-0, that's a big advantage. But right now it's still 3-0 and it's second and goal for the Chiefs. We'll keep an eye on that. Anything to add to the Dylan Raiola discussion?
Yeah. So we're talking about important recruits that did or did not, super impactful, like a level that would change the program changing recruits. And I'm going to throw one out that was, I believe, Mike Riley's last recruiting class, Micah Parsons. He was down to Nebraska and Penn State. He came to Friday Night Lights. He put on a show. It was so painfully obvious he was simply going to play 3 years and be gone and probably be a top 5 NFL draft pick. And I'll be honest with you, I think the young man, first of all, chose the right school for what he wanted to do. But I think he saw the way that Mike Riley ran the program and truly felt this is not someplace I'm going to get better.
Chiefs score, Pacheco scores, but it's going to be called back, I think, a holding penalty on Kansas City. So that one will come back and it will remain 3-0 Kansas City. I just think this is so big for Matt Rule going forward because not only if you get Raiola and he is the first one to jump, I think he's going to announce in March, right? He's going to announce sometime in March.
It kind of sounded like he would like to get this done and over with relatively quickly.
You get Raiola, you have a chance to have a top 10 class because he's going to recruit other guys to this class.
Well, and
you might have 25 wide receivers.
You have, well, and currently that's the thing, man. 2024 recruits. Who is right now? Matt Rule and his staff are offering guys, and you see they are the number 5, the number 17, the number 24 ranked player in the country.
Yeah, it's weird because all these recruits are either 5 stars or they have no stars.
Yeah. Well, and
run 10-200s.
Think back to the way Scott Frost recruited. I mean, I remember people asking him questions about why he doesn't go after like 5 stars and, uber talented players. And he would always kind of filibuster type of but it was like, they'll never come here.
Right.
Why would they want to come play for me? And it's like, I don't know why anybody wants to come play for you, but still, why aren't you going out after him?
Yeah. And of course we know it's a legendary story. He didn't do well with Dylan Raiola the first time around.
It's not a public story, but and it's not one
most
that we'll
people
ever share.
know it.
But a lot of people know what happened and why ultimately Nebraska did not get a commitment from him.
But now they get another shot.
Coach. Yeah,
they get another shot, and we'll see how it goes. But I like that question. We'll try to make a Husker question every single week. Have a Husker.
Well, yeah,
question.
we had it last week, which I thought was fun. We had a lot of great chats in, and we had a couple other texts off the Starter Heyman text line as well. And Dominic Sue and Joe Burrow were both mentioned numerous times. Yeah. And somebody said Frazier, obviously, because he's the last guy that was an absolute program changer and in Caps. So and that's the thing. We were talking. I mean, Dylan Raiola. I think Nebraska's program is going to change without him in the mix if he does not choose to come to Nebraska, because I believe that Matt Rule is I think it's going to work. We may briefly have the grape Kool-Aid analogy discussion I told you about earlier on the air, but Dylan Raiola is going to be the catalyst of the change if he does come here.
Nebraska is building a $160 million facility. I mean, it's going to be, from everybody that I've heard, not only the best facility in college football, which Zach Weger told me it would be, but maybe the last of its kind in college football.
Oh, yeah. All the money's going to the kids.
All the money is going to NIL. And Nebraska had planned this long before NIL came along, and then COVID hit. So the delay in building a $160 million facility. But it made me think what Dominic Raiola said. Nebraska's a sleeping giant. And when people have said that for years and years and years, that Nebraska's, because they've actually been a giant, and now they've just been asleep since 2001. Nebraska's been asleep.
At least sleep begins until they can go to work from 9 to 5.
Yeah. Well, they woke up a little bit for a couple of minutes in 2009, and then they went back to sleep. But Nebraska's mostly been a sleeping giant. But now, I mean, you hear that story every time a recruit visits town. I thought it was going to be all corn. I thought pigs would be running around the stadium. I didn't know. I thought they would be milking cows somewhere in the lunchroom. But no, it's really cool. The downtown's great. There is no corn growing in the middle of the field. It's great. I love it. We've heard those stories for years and years. But you add Matt Rule to the practice facility, to NIL, and now I'm starting to believe that maybe Nebraska could be a sleeping giant.
No, I totally think it is. And here's the question I have, and I always love asking people that when I was able to travel for business, being from Nebraska, and one of the favorite things that clients or whatever would always, you're from Nebraska, your football team sucks. And I'm like, yeah, whatever, whether it was Riley or Frost or the end of the Pelini era or the Cal, it made no difference. But it was always fun to pick on Nebraska. And the one question that I would always ask people, and because I used to fly around the country for work, I used to travel a lot with the Stars, obviously. I would ask them, I would say, let me ask you one question. Is college football better or worse when Nebraska's good? You know what's funny? Not one of them ever said college football's better when Nebraska sucks. College football's better. And it's not knocking teams that are building, hopefully, a tradition where they can stay relevant and in the mix and whatever, like Kansas and Kansas State are trying to do right now. College football's great when schools like that have success. It really is. But at the end of the day, to me, college football is better when the big dogs that have been there for years, year in, year out, the USCs, the Alabamas, the Michigans, the Oklahomas, the Texas, Nebraska, Florida State, Miami in the last 35, 40. I mean, I'm talking the traditional powers since essentially the mid-60s. When those teams are at their best, Notre Dame, LSU, college football's better. I love having the other teams in there. I love it. I would love it if Kansas was number one and everybody's like, holy crap, they're going for their second straight national title.
I couldn't take that.
I probably couldn't either, but I mean, it would be a great
story.
story.
Basketball.
But if Nebraska is good, if all the big dogs are really good like they were for many years, I just think college football is better.
I agree. And all big programs have gone through dormant periods. I mean, Texas has done that. Notre Dame certainly has. Oklahoma, Miami, USC. It's just that Nebraska continues to sleep, where those schools at least wake up occasionally. It feels like something has awoken. And again, it's Kool-Aid season. We could be looking back at the season and say, I guess we were wrong again. We're idiots. I'll never fall for that one again. And then we'll fall for it
next year
again. But it does feel like there's just something different. And it's not just the new facility. It's not just that Matt Rule has an energy about him. He has an it quality. There's something going on. And I think their ability to evaluate guys is, I thought, well put by Brian Munson, Tom Osborne-esque.
Yeah.
I remember stories about him going to watch Steve Warren wrestle and say, you know what, that guy, I know he can play football, but now I'm really convinced he can play football by watching him wrestle or watching guys play basketball. They kind of did that. They wanted athletes, and they wanted guys that played multiple sports. Some coaches don't like that. That a guy will play baseball and basketball and football. They want them to focus in and put all their energy into their particular sport. I think Rule wants guys to do everything.
Well, and one of our coworkers here at 93.7 The Ticket will tell you, as a former 3-star standout and probably the single greatest athlete in the history of Nebraska high school sports, Eric Strickland, play as many sports as you can. Do not specialize.
Yeah.
And he said, and we were talking about it, I think, with him on the air last week or 2 weeks ago, one of the reasons why he never had a major serious injury was because he was not specialized, because the lifting, the workouts, the training that
working the same body parts.
You're working, but you're working them in different ways to where you strengthen everything.
Right.
Lateral movement as well as acceleration, as well as I mean,
I get it.
The whole body gets tuned up when you are a multi-sport athlete, because you have to utilize so many different muscle groups for, a third of the year, a third of the year, and a third of the year.
So here we are drinking the Kool-Aid and loving it. It's all grape all the time on this particular show. We'll ask Steve Sipple his favorite flavor of Kool-Aid.
I think that's a great idea.
It's a good one. The Chiefs have increased their lead to 6-0. Barn burner. Compared to the first game, it is a barn burner. I think it was 31-7. Philadelphia winning the first game. Horribly officiated game. And Brock Purdy went out early in that game. It just did not work out for the 49ers today. So we're at least hoping to see a good game 2. It has not gone well for Cincinnati so far, but a lot of game left. We'll give you a scoreboard update coming up, and then we'll talk to Steve Sipple of the Husker Online, of course, of the On3 network. We'll do that coming up next.
Mike Shaver here for Trek CBD. It's basketball season, and that means you're fighting cold weather and snow to get to the arena, waiting for lines at the game, and yelling too much at the refs. Trek CBD has a variety of products that help calm me down during the game so I don't go over the top. And they have a variety of options to calm you down before, during, and after any game. Whether you're looking for drinkable Delta 8 seltzers, hemp-derived Delta 9 syrups for your beverages, or anything else, Trek CBD has it all at 84th and Andrew. Trek CBD, CBD done right.
Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay, playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza. The big one. All the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down. Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Now we're in the Sunday. Rewind back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back. Tom Stevens here, Mike Melby there. Husker Rewind every Sunday, 5 to 7. Talking about our favorite Kool-Aid flavor. You're a grape guy.
I am.
We're drinking the Kool-Aid. Do you have a Kool-Aid flavor, Steve Sipple, that you drink most often? Or you like Kool-Aid?
Yeah, I mean, I did when I was a kid. I can't say the last time I had it. I'll go with Melby. I did like grape.
His mom used to.
If my mom made Kool-Aid, I just didn't want to see orange in there.
No.
All the red kind of tastes the same. I mean, what do you? It's cherry, raspberry. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So my mom would buy 3 grape, 3 strawberry, 3 orange, 3 tropical punch, 3 whatever. I drink the 3 grape, and then I would literally lose all of the other packets.
Yeah.
All right. Now, so you said something critical. Yeah, I would. Now it takes me back. Tropical punch was what I would want in the refrigerator.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. Tropical punch.
I think if I'm drinking tropical punch, I'm going high C. I think I might be going high C.
Yeah. Tropical punch high C was really good too.
Yeah.
You're right.
Delicious.
And I can tell you this. I can attest to this as a older than when I was a kid drinking Kool-Aid. Tropical punch Kool-Aid worked really well with vodka. Anyway,
yeah, I've done that. I've done that fairly recently, as a matter of fact. Steve Sipple of Husker Online. We asked this question at maybe the top of the show, and because you've written about it and talked to Dominic, Dylan Raiola is the most important recruit for Nebraska football since. Who would you put in that conversation?
I just automatically wins at that question. It's hard for me. Tommy, probably.
That's where Amon Green, Tommy Frazier. But
I always go quarterback. I go quarterback.
Well, and we went with one that Nebraska didn't get in Joe Burrow.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
Yeah, when you get a legacy, it feels like legacies a legacy recruit comes around like every 20 years. That's any good. That's a difference maker, and it feels like it's become that for Nebraska football. But Nebraska has a shot, in your opinion, to get him, right?
Yeah, a real shot. I mean, I don't know how I'd handicap it. The school I'd worry about a lot is Georgia. It seems like USC is coming. I know early in the process, Dominic wasn't enthralled with USC and the way Lincoln Riley was recruiting Dylan, but I think that's changing. I still think it's either going to be Georgia or Nebraska. And, Kirby's heavily, you're going to say, well, of course he is, but I think Dominic's impressed how much he hears from Kirby, Kirby's level of enthusiasm, Kirby's pitch. that's going to be hard. I mean, if you're a Nebraska fan, or if you're a Nebraska coach, you got to battle that.
Yeah.
But Nebraska is making all the right moves right now. Dominic's impressed with the way they're recruiting him, and I don't know. I mean, I always got to be a little careful talking about Dominic all the time. This is just Dylan's decision, and Dominic makes that clear. It's a tight family, though, and that works in Nebraska's favor because, for obvious reasons, Dom. I say it all the time. Everybody, I think, has some level of affinity for their alma mater. Dominic has a really high affinity.
Yeah.
So, and of course, Donovan's here too.
Hey, Steve Sipple from Husker Online, the On3 Network, joining us here on Husker Rewind. I want to ask you about something you just said. You said that Kirby Smart has got a great pitch. On Matt Rule's appearance with Bussin' with the Boys, They asked him, "What's your pitch?" And he goes, I don't have one.
Right.
There's such a difference between the two approaches of how you recruit. And there's no way you know the answer to the question of, well, which one is more important to Dylan Raiola? But ultimately, at the end of the day, one of those is going to be more popular to him, and he's probably going to go to that school. What do you think of Matt Rule's approach of, I don't really pitch kids, and the way he's approached recruiting? He goes after, no stars and 5 stars. Makes no difference. Everybody in between.
Well, I mean, it's a little semantics. I listened to that Bussin' with the Boys, and he said that he just lays out what Nebraska can offer. Rule just lays out what Nebraska can offer, and that's kind of a pitch. So I think maybe he hears pitch as kind of used car salesman. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Used car salesman, I've been in trouble for that, but I think I don't know. I don't know. It's interesting when you talk to Dominic, and I don't talk to Dylan. I've only met Dylan. I've met him and talked to him one time other than that. But I talk to Dominic all the time. We've talked for 20 years. And you just can't help but come away after those conversations thinking, yeah, Nebraska's definitely in this.
Yeah.
I mean, they are definitely in it. There's no doubt in my mind. Like I said, I think it'll either be Georgia or Nebraska. Now USC, Oregon, they're in there. And I don't know that anybody else is right now. Dominic did say that someone could emerge, but I think this will be like a March decision, and so it's going to come pretty quickly.
Steve Sipple, Husker Online of the On3 Network. You mentioned that you roll your eyes sometimes at certain questions, and you asked, you were talking with Dominic, and he mentioned that Nebraska, he thinks, is a sleeping giant. Do you buy that? Because a lot of people do roll their eyes when they hear stuff like that. Like, just show me. Don't tell me that. But do you think Nebraska is a sleeping giant?
Yeah, I do. I really do. I'm definitely in that camp. I'm in that. Everybody's a little different in the way they look at Nebraska right now, and how they regard Nebraska in terms of what Nebraska can accomplish in the future. And I'm in the camp that says they can rise quick. They can be a college football playoff team fairly quickly with the right people here. I mean, they just haven't had the right people. Everything else is in place. So there's no excuses. They commit all the energy and money. The fan energy is incredible. The fans are gigantic in that equation. You just got to get a quarterback. That would help. Like a quarterback like Dylan. You got to start getting all Americans here, and it can snap back. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying it's overnight. It's not. It took Georgia 41 years to. It was 41 years between national championships, and Georgia, before Kirby got there, were pretty disappointing a lot of the time. They got the right guy. They got Kirby, and they got Kirby. Just, I've read all about what Georgia does. It starts with recruiting, and it's amazing what they've put together. Now, I'm not saying Nebraska can do that. They're going to have to do it a little different way. What works against Nebraska, to me, is I don't know if you guys have seen. Oh, recently I saw it on TikTok. It was just a circle drawn in the southeast around the area that have won 16 of the last 17 national championships. It's a pretty small circle, and you can almost, sense take LSU out of it, and it's really small. Then it's Clemson and Georgia, Alabama, and tight circle southeast. You just got to start wrestling with that. And I next time I talk to Rule, I'm gonna ask him about that.
Steve Sipple of Husker Online, the On3 Network, joining us. He's also on Early Break with Sip and Jake right here on 93.7 The Ticket, Monday through Friday. Last week, you had former Nebraska assistant coach Bill Bush on the program, and he spoke a little bit of when he was an analyst under Coach Frost and the analyst that he had once he became defensive coordinator and the jobs that they did. I got the feeling that it was a little bit of shade thrown in a certain direction. I know you're very careful with, pointing out shade that's been thrown because, we all are human beings at the end of the day, but that was kind of the way I perceived it. What did you take out of his comments about just from that specific part of the time you spent together?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it was, so Bill came here in 2021 as an analyst with he's got a pretty extensive resume, real extensive. And, he just came from LSU, which won the national title in 2019 and all that. He's coached for Orgeron and coached for Urban Meyer going back to the Utah days. And I know there was some frustration on his part that he wasn't more involved, that he wasn't asked many questions. I would personally think that with his resume that you would tap that. You would want to kind of tap into his wisdom because he's got a lot of it, which I'm glad he was able to show this season, Bill. There's definitely frustration there in 2021. He said he wasn't allowed to do hardly anything. And all right off the bat, as an analyst, you're not allowed to do that much. But I think there's no question they could have used him more. So I think it was, if you listen to it, it wasn't like he went on a rant. But I knew before he said that on the radio last week that there was a level of frustration that he felt.
Yeah. You mentioned before on this show that you don't think it's a big rebuild. I think Matt Rule mentioned it on Bussin' with the Boys as well, that he doesn't think it's a slow burn. And he's recruiting like it. I mean, Nebraska's over 100 and some scholarships
102.
right now. And they've recruited
they're incredibly. I mean, they're really pushing it now. I mean, they're well over. I mean, they're up like 103, I think now.
Do you
think
they're
going to have to lose a lot of guys?
Do you think that's a reaction to what happened in Carolina, that he thought he had 4 years and he only got 2, that he's not going to make that same mistake twice? Like, he is going all in very quickly.
Yeah, I can't. It's hard to figure out exactly what's going on. It's somewhat complicated because of NIL. Obviously, they have to have some sort of plan. I know that rebuild discussion's really become sort of hot button. I don't understand. I mean, I think a lot of people have ulterior motives in that discussion, and one is Frost. I mean, there's a certain amount of people in the fan base that if you say that it's not a train wreck and that that team held up pretty well, and people perceive that you're giving Frost some credit, they get really angry. That's not really what I'm doing. When I say it, I say I'm giving the players a lot of credit, and I've given them respect. I'm sort of amazed by the percentage of the fan base that just blatantly disrespects returning players. I mean, it's sort of sad, but I get, and maybe that happens everywhere. Even the greatest fans in the country, I guess, do that. They just blatantly disrespect the returning players. But those guys, including those 10 guys on defense, you heard Bill Bush say it, that the walkthrough before the Iowa game was like a national championship level walkthrough. That doesn't sound like a train wreck to me. They beat Iowa. They were hanging in games all through the really latter part of the season. They got a starting quarterback who risked his life out there at times. It seemed like, why disrespect that? I mean, Casey Thompson played hard. And Rule, you know what? I was really heartened to hear Matt Rule on Bustle with the boys say that basically what I'm saying, that he watched the team, lost the head coach, kept playing hard. He said there's a lot in that locker room. And he said we got a big physical team here. Now you're going to say, well, yeah, they're going to have to replace a bunch of guys. Yeah, they're going to have to replace guys, but we're talking about 10 starters back on defense. They're not going to replace those guys. We're talking about 2 Power 5 starting quarterbacks and a running back room that has a starter back and a guy that could overtake him, and A.J. Allen, and then Gabe Irvin has experience, and Ramir Johnson. You have 7 offensive linemen with starting experience. I mean, he walked into not a great situation, but it's not like what Riley left the place.
Steve Sipple from Husker Online, the On3 Network, joining us here on the Husker Rewind. Sip, I want to ask you, shifting gears here a little bit, about Fred Hoiberg and the Hoops team. And, we kind of already talked a little bit about it. I think the last 9 games, prior to the injuries, there was no doubt Fred Hoiberg was coming back for year 5. The injuries have now happened. They are where they are. They're going to struggle to win games here on out, regardless of the opponent, whether it's Purdue or whether it's Minnesota. Every game is going to be tough to win. Does he right now, and I know it's tough to call because you got 9 games to play, and we really, truly do need to see how the team responds, but is there any thought that, it's a done deal one way or the other right now, that he's back or he's out? Or what are your thoughts with Hoops with the injuries to Bandamel and Gary?
Well, no, I don't think there's anything decided. Okay, so they've played 2 games now where both of those guys weren't able to play. And, one they lost, they just lost this game the other day to Maryland. And, got away from them in the second half. They lost at Penn State. Not a great performance. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm a little disappointed with the way they've responded the last 2 games. I expected more. Now, any evaluation of Fred Hoiberg's program now, I mean, come on, you have to take into account that he lost his 2 best defensive players. Now, the question becomes, what kind of a tightrope going forward? I don't know that you just give him a complete pass, but you got to cut him slack. So I don't know. There's a sweet spot in there that you got to hit in the evaluation. It's going to be challenging. I think there are some people that will just give him a complete pass, and I tend to think that way. Except the last 2 games, I wouldn't. I expected a little bit more than I saw those 2 games. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at it. One way to look at it is the Niners got to the NFC Championship game with a 3rd-string quarterback. They just didn't write off their season once quarterbacks started going down. I mean, you lose guys in sports. It doesn't have to be, with the good programs, it's not necessarily catastrophic. So if it's catastrophic, then I think we're going to have a hard conversation at the end.
Very true. I actually did the postgame show yesterday with Bach, and he brought up a very interesting little kind of analogy or whatever. He said, here's where I was at with Frost and I'm at with Hoiberg. And I asked people, do you hope he wins and succeeds next year, or do you believe he can?
That's a great, yeah.
And I thought it was, I'm like, Bach, dude, that's a tip of the cap, man. That's a great question. Right.
It is. A lot of times fine distinctions like that do have brilliance, and that's a good distinction. Do you really believe he can, or is it just hope? I mean, Fred is popular. I mean, I want to say this. I think a lot of people want it to work with Fred. Now, and you could also use it kind of say off what Bach said. A lot of people want Fred to succeed, but do they really believe he's going to succeed? And listen, the one thing you can't ignore in this, and I bring it up every time, I'm sure people get tired of it, he's 12-58 in the Big Ten.
Yep.
I mean, it's a little ridiculous. It is. I mean, I think Fred would have to agree with that. That 12-58. I mean, how much slack do you need? There's going to be a point where you're like, if it gets to be 12-64, what are we doing?
It's the worst 4-year stretch ever for Nebraska basketball. I mean, it's just, and here's what's going to happen. I think Alberts likes him, and I think he's sick of paying buyouts, and he just paid a coach a bunch of money and a staff of assistants a bunch of money, and I think Fred's staying. So get used to it.
Well, I don't know if you can make. I don't know if you can make decisions like that. Now you can if it doesn't get too unwieldy. But
that's the caveat.
We'll see.
Their last 7 losses are by double digits. If they lose their last 9 games, let's say they don't beat Minnesota at home, they lose their last 9 games, they finish 10-21, and their last 16 losses are by double digits. I'm one of those guys that I believe he can succeed here next year. I'm on that side of the hope versus belief. If that is what happens to the end of this season, I don't know that I still believe. And you know what I mean?
Mike, I don't think it'll get that bad. They're going to be.
I don't either. I'm just saying that there's a way to turn somebody from one side to the other, because flip side, you have the people that are like, yeah, I hope he does, but there's no chance. And all of a sudden, let's say they win 3 and they're in 4 more. Yeah, they get blown out a couple of times, but you're going to go, okay, great. He's missing his 2 best defensive players, and he put together 3 wins. He was within a possession, a couple of hard losses, etc. And you're like, you know what? Maybe he can do it,
but he won't.
Yeah. That's what you're looking for. Yeah, I mean, that's what you're looking for going forward.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, competitiveness, and also what I think you better look at too is what the arena looks like and feels like in terms of fan count.
It's we could go on with this conversation, but it's just tough for me to see Creighton playing its best basketball at the end of the year every single year, and Nebraska playing its worst basketball at the end of the year every single year. But that's where we are with Nebraska basketball. It is sad. I'm very sad, but I'm happy to talk to you because you're the best. Stephen M. Sipple, Early Break, and of course of the On3 Network, Husker Online. Great stuff, Steve. We'll listen in tomorrow.
All right, thank you guys.
Thanks, Sip.
Yeah, he's the best. I'm just sad when I get to talk. The second best player right now might be a walk-on.
You know what? I'm going to tell you, right? I genuinely had a moment of sadness as I glanced over. I'm like, Tom's wrapping this up. Why is? That's why it's wrapped. Like
We're way late.
We're way late. I could sit there till I have like 14 more questions for Sip, man.
We would talk to Sip forever if we could, but we'll just listen to him instead tomorrow during Early Break with Sip and Jake. Let's get to break and finish out maybe with some Husker basketball talk, some happier stuff. Tailgate, yes. Recipes for the Super Bowl. Man. And we'll give you an update on the game when we come back right after this.
Every child has the ability to be successful and thrive in life, but sometimes they need your help. Big Brothers Big Sisters of Lincoln exist to help children unlock their potential by making meaningful matches between adult volunteers and young people. Right now, there are children just waiting for a mentor to step up and make an impact in their lives. Learn more online at bbslincoln.org. There are kids right here in Lincoln waiting to get started. Volunteer today and start something big.
If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, call 988 for free, confidential, and compassionate support. On July 16th, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is transitioning to 988. There is hope. For 24/7 support, call, text, or chat 988.
Sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station. 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. That's doihaveprediabetes.org.
Wait, did they just say 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes? That's 33.33333% of adults. That means it could be me, my boss, or my boss's boss, or me, my favorite sister, or my other sister. That's 7 members of my 21-person romantic book club. Wait, the 1 in 3 could be me, my karaoke partner Carol, or my karaoke enemy Jeff. I'm going to take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
Back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike.
That's old school. Yeah? No school like the old school.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Husker Rewind. My name is Mike Belby. That is Tom Stevens, and this is 93.7 The Ticket. You can also check us out on on theticketfm.com. Just got done chatting with Steve Sipple of Husker Online and the On3 Network, plus Early Break with Sip and Jake here on 93.7 The Ticket, talking about Coach Hoiberg and Nebraska basketball in the direction. I want to put a bow on that. We had a couple of texts earlier about, hey, if it's not Hoiberg, who could do who would you replace him with? And again, I'm not saying he needs to go. I'm saying he needs to stay. But before we get there real quick, I want to do a quick tailgate time. I want to share a quick food recipe with you. It's simple. It's a party favorite. Everybody that comes to your tailgate, whether it's for the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks, these will actually be in studio here in a couple of weeks when we do the Super Bowl show. Barbecue Little Smokies. You're going to get whatever your favorite brand
I've had
of Little
your
Smokies.
barbecue smokies. They're really good.
Whatever your favorite brand is. I'm a Hillshire Farms guy, but you put a couple of packages of those into a crock pot along with, I'm a Sweet Baby Ray's guy.
Ooh, Sweet Baby Ray's.
And then I add a quarter of a cup of grape jelly, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and some Captain Morgan.
Captain Morgan.
And you put about that much Captain Morgan in there.
Is there any recipe of yours that doesn't include at least a little bit of alcohol?
Not many.
Yeah.
So
That's good.
That's simple. It's that simple. Trust me, you put that bad boy on low, you let it cook. Don't put it on high. Put it on low. Give it a couple hours to warm up, man. That is insane. And then Cajun lemonade. 2 cups of light cups. Got me, folks? Cups. 2 cups of light rum, 2 cups of vodka, a 12-ounce can of frozen lemonade concentrate that is thawed, a teaspoon of hot sauce, and a liter of chilled club soda. Add some crushed ice, some lemon slices. If you've got sugarcane sticks or something cool like that for a garnish, you stir together the rum, the vodka, the lemonade, and the hot sauce. Add the club soda just before you serve it. You can pour it into some highball glasses with the crushed ice.
You should bring that. You're going to be here for Super Bowl Sunday
Cajun
doing
lemonade.
the show.
Yeah, and right now, Rico is in, Nick is in, and Bach is in.
I'm out.
You're out.
Yep.
And we're going to go 1 to 3 on Super Bowl Sunday. And I am bringing in some sweet and spicy wings, some garlic parm wings, and my barbecue Little Smokies. And I may or may not bring in some refreshments.
Awesome.
But yeah, we're gonna have some fun. I know you're gonna be out of town, but we decided we're gonna have some fun. So
let's do a little Husker basketball talk before we head out, and maybe a get off my lawn. But you always hear this question when you replace a coach, especially I think in basketball. Well, if you fire Tim Miles, who are you gonna get? You fire Barry Collier, Doc Saddle, who are you gonna get? Well, I've got an answer to that question, and it was actually a guy that Nebraska could have gotten before they got Hoiberg, which everybody considered a home run hire. And I did as well. I thought, Hoiberg, if he can't do it, you can't win at Nebraska. I think a lot of us thought the same thing as it relates to Scott Frost. A guy, though, that I would love to see here, if it doesn't work out with Fred Hoiberg, is Craig Smith.
I would agree.
He was at Utah State and did a great job there. He's now at Utah. I think they're 15-8 right now.
Yeah.
But he's a program builder everywhere he goes. And you could say, well, why would he leave Utah? Utah's a better gig than Nebraska is, but it may not be for long because, the Pac-12, what's going to happen to the Pac-12?
Yeah.
Utah's not invited to the Big Ten. No. UCLA, USC are.
Yep.
So they're going to be here. And he might be looking around for a gig. Craig Smith is a guy I would love to see, and he's very personable. He's very similar to Tim Miles, but he can really coach.
And I'll be honest, if he does not leave Tim Miles' staff, Tim Miles is still here, and they are pretty successful.
Right. And what also hurt Tim Miles was losing Kenya Hunter.
Oh, big time.
Kenya Hunter could really, really recruit.
Yep.
And he did so. He did so at UConn, and now UConn is among the best teams in college basketball. Yep. Most of those recruits are his.
Yep. Name you threw out that I had heard in the past, Darian DeVry from Drake University, 711 winning percentage over his 4 years at Drake. I know it's a mid-major, but out of the Missouri Valley. Another one, my top pick, if Fred were to get blown out at the end of the year, the one that I think I would probably hone in on is St. John's coach Mike Anderson.
I like the style of play.
He's never
40 minutes of hell, baby.
Never in his 20-plus year coaching career had a losing record.
I just think Fred's going to be back.
I do too. I hope he is.
I hope he earns it, though. I hope it's not just we're bringing Fred back. It doesn't matter what it looks like the last 9 to 10 games. We're just going to bring him back. I hope he earns it.
No, and I completely agree. I just we had a couple of people on the Starter Heyman text line that said, I'm done with him. I want him gone. If so, who would we get? We wanted to make sure we gave you guys some props and a little bit of thoughts on, hey, if it doesn't work out and he does move on from Nebraska, who is it going to be? And a couple of names for you that Tom and I just kind of not necessarily picked out of the air. I think Dana Altman would be one that I know Nebraska fans
love
would say,
Dana,
hey,
but Dana ain't leaving Oregon.
No, I wouldn't.
He isn't. My Get Off My Lawn nominee.
Whoops.
Not that one.
Is the bugle player at
Here it is.
Churchill Downs.
Get off my lawn.
The referee. College basketball, I think it's been bad this year. Nebraska's been a victim at times. There were a couple of calls I thought yesterday. I thought the C.J. Wilcher call, the referee could have let that go. I don't know what he said.
There's a couple of words that he could have said, but if those words weren't uttered, come on.
The officiating today in the Philadelphia-San Francisco game I thought was bad. It was a running into the kicker penalty at best. They called it a 15-yarder. Yep. The catch by Devontae Smith was not a catch. It'd be, I think, easy to put somebody up there, buzz it in to somebody on the sidelines and say, hey, we missed it. Let's change that call. So that's my get off my lawn.
And I absolutely agree with you, and I'm not going to be able to pull it up in time, but there is a college basketball official who last night at a 10 p.m. tip-off, Central Time, 10 p.m. tip-off. Okay, so 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. out on the West Coast, officiated a game, and he was at a game that tipped off at noon today. I think it's the Purdue-Indiana game or whatever. So this is a guy that officiated in California with a tip-off at 10 p.m. Central last night that was expected to officiate then at noon Central today.
That's not his fault. That's somebody else's fault.
But I agree with you. Officiating sucks, and that's my get off the lawn as well. But it's also the people that can't take better care of these guys. I can't blame that guy if he makes a couple of bad calls today. You know why? Because he hadn't slept in 48 hours.
By the way, sometimes those calls benefit me. LeBron was fouled last night against Boston. Should have been called. I'm glad it wasn't. Boston wins the game.
Yeah, they were lamenting that. The Lakers were again. They've been on the wrong end of a couple of calls. Or non-calls.
I'm glad they're mad because I don't like any of it. We are leaving. We're going to go watch the end of the football game. The Chiefs lead, and it's getting 13-3 right now. I think Cincinnati has the ball. We'll see you next week.
All right, Tom.
Bye.
See you.
Gaina Trucking is hiring CDL Class A and B